Hey everyone, welcome to the Open Stutter YouTube channel. My name is Nick Brow, and today I am super excited to have two friends on, Bevan and Steven, and I'll let them say hi and introduce themselves in a moment. They are both from Ireland. They've both been involved or are involved with the Irish Stammering Association. They both have really awesome social media accounts related to destigmatizing stuttering, and I'll let them talk more about that in a moment. They are both poets, I'd say, for sure, and and I've had so much fun just spending time with them and laughing with them. So they're great people as well. So one of you wants to jump in and say hi and introduce yourself.
I'll go first, okay? So as Nick said, my name is Bevan, and I'm from Ireland. I'm from the capital city of Ireland, which is Dublin. I'm 24. I work with the Irish Stammering Association as well. I'm the administrative assistant for them. So we're getting prepped and excited for ISAD 2022. And as Nick said, I've got a social media account called My Stutter and I where I post poetry, like opinions, thoughts. I kind of share my experiences about being a person who stutters. And I suppose one of the things that kind of pushed me to make the account was that it was for my younger self. So I kind of put myself in my younger self's shoes and was like, what would have liked to have seen growing up as a child who stutters. And yeah, I think I like to say that my younger self is looking up at me and is like, that's what I wanted to see. And yeah, doing myself proud, I think.
Cool.
Love it.
Stephen Green is my name, and I'm also from Dublin in Ireland, but I'm now living down in the southeast of the country in a city called Waterford. Like Bevan, I'm also involved with the Irish Stammering Association, so I am on the board, and I'm also a support group facilitator with the Irish Stammering Association. And I'm also one of the former chairs of the association also. So I've been involved with the ISA since 2005, I think. So yeah, so it's quite a long time. Like Bevan, I also have a social media account that I set up. It's called the Stutterverse. I set that up now. I think it's probably up and running about a year and a half. I set it up to just really challenge the narrative out there that stuttering is something that has to be overcome. So I share my thoughts and share my poetry, as Nick was saying earlier on. And I also share like maybe current research that is out there on stammering, and I try and show stammering in a positive light then as well. So cool. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Yeah, and Stephen, thinking about your posts and recent posts, I just saw that one what TV show is it called? Where there's like the upside down.
Oh yeah. So that's from Stranger Things.
Right?
Like here is me as a 48-year-old man, and I'm aware of Stranger Things. But yeah, so that post was in relation to just there's so much good information that is out there on stammering now. But I think people have to know where to find it then as well. And I just love that podcast that's done with the Stuttering Foundation, because there's just great content on it anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And so like thinking about both of your content you have online and what you're trying to share and promote, I think about, when I saw you all most recently in England at the Stama conference. I mentioned to you both earlier, but I felt this like great sense of excitement and energy towards working towards destigmatizing stuttering, standing up for stuttering, and and I was excited and invigorated by that, and I guess I see what you all are doing out in the world, and I think it's really amazing, and I wonder what it's yeah, I wonder what it's like for you, what it was like starting that, right? And like, because you're both kind of taking on a role here with these social media accounts of working to actively destigmatize stuttering. And Stephen, in your case, right, you related to a lot of like present things in like modern day culture, right? Like current evolving social media and everything. And Bevan, like, listening to your poetry, really talking about stuttering pride and making stuttering okay, and talking about how complicated it all is, right? Things that a lot of people are going to relate to and grasp onto. Um, and so I guess I'm wondering, like, when you all started, so you both are actively working to destigmatize stuttering, which is great. Um, and I'm wondering, when you started, what was that like? Was that scary? How and thinking about someone who might watch this video and who has thought about maybe making their own social media account, or just making their first post about stuttering, right? Like, what was it like when you started being so publicly authentic in a way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sorry, Ben.
No, no, you're gone. You're gone.
Okay. It's interesting. It's because you were putting part of you out into the public space. So I think that can be quite challenging because there's sometimes that you can be a bit precious about yourself as well. So when you're putting yourself out there, you have to be ready to take maybe the good and the bad of social media then as well, and to understand not to personalize the whole thing either, because what you're doing is you're putting out content that will reach out to some people, but other people maybe mightn't be into it either. So I think it's to one big things for me was like not to take it personal if maybe somebody made a comment that wasn't so nice or so on, but to stay true to yourself in what you believe as a person who's stutter. So
Mm. I get that, Susan. I think like I've been really lucky in that, like I've gotten very few comments, or not so nice comments. But I totally get where you're coming from. But I think one of the things that gets to me, or got to me in the beginning, was my friends talking to me about it or like commenting on it. And that was really weird because I was like, obviously I was like being very open, and I had this kind of platform, but it didn't kind of click that other people could see it, could like see the content.
Mhm.
So a few of my friends were like, "Oh, like you posted this and this is very interesting." And I was like, "Oh, you actually saw that?" And it's like it's just such a weird kind of feeling. So I think like at the beginning I was very like I was very happy to post, and I was like I really enjoyed it, and like I wasn't necessarily like scared of it, but it was weird in those moments where I was like, "Oh yeah, people actually see it." Like I think for a while for me it was like for myself, and then when other people started to like talk about it or comment on it or like it, or that kind of thing, I was like, "Oh, this is actually like kind of like this is a lot bigger than myself and my own thoughts and feelings and stuff." So that took a little bit of getting used to, I suppose.
Yeah. Stephen, did you experience that as well, where it became bigger than just you? Even though it is you, right, Stephen? It is you, but the Bevan, like these are
Yeah.
your
Mm.
forms.
Yeah, totally. Because even when I started to get a few messages of people saying, "Oh, I totally get what you're posting here," and it's the fact that you get to see that this has an impact on other people. Then,
Yeah.
so that was big for me to understand that, yeah, if I'm putting this out there, maybe the content can touch people then as well. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was just thinking that actually just something that went out of my mind there. Actually, it will jump back in at some stage.
Yeah. So I guess I wanna jump in here with like a hard question, or a harder question in my mind that I feel like is harder, is um like just wanting to know where you are, where you both are in your own experiences of stuttering right now, right? Thinking about when we craft a social media post, it's crafted, right? It is something we work on, and it's shiny and new, and it's pressed, right? It's ready to go.
Mm.
And then life, our personal lives can maybe be a little bit more messy with stuttering. And sometimes I feel that in my own work, right? As a speech therapist, working with people who stutter, um, I'm working on, helping, people who stutter not let stuttering have a negative impact in their life. But there are still times when I'm thinking more about my own stuttering, and it totally is, having an impact on my day. And in a way, right, I think that can make our work, the work we're doing, whether in therapy or on social media, right, more powerful almost. But what's it been like for you two doing this journey of growing as yourself, but then also growing your social media following and account? And what's that like?
One of the
I
biggest. Sorry, Bevan. No, Bevan, I will let you go first on this. My apologies.
okay. Yeah, I suppose I think just going back to like the beginning when I like first made the account, I think like I really struggled in the sense that like I wanted to kind of create this like very accepting, positive, like everything's fine, you're like you can be yourself and all that kind of stuff. And I really like pushed that. And then I kind of took a step back and I was like, well, no, like having a stutter isn't all about that. It can have like a negative impact in your on your life in some cases, like in some moments. And I think it's important to recognize that. And I think like putting out the message that stuttering is complex and it is complicated. And I think that's okay. And I think feeling your feelings, whether they're like positive or negative or angry, annoyed, sad, happy, like, you know, all the kind of range of emotions that we have in relation to stuttering, I think that's really helped me come to terms in like accepting not only my stutter, my stutter, but the impact it has on my life. And you know, I don't want to pretend, like I don't see the point in pretending online and on social media that like everything is perfect and everything is positive and everything is like, you know, like shiny and stuff. Which is why my most recent post is basically like me on my bedroom floor, hair up, no makeup on, no filter on, nothing, and just me talking about like an experience I had on the phone. And I think that's one of the most, like one of the posts that has gotten the most engagement on it, because I think it's all about being yourself, but being like genuinely yourself. And I think hopefully people who look at like my content or Stephen's content kind of see that we aren't perfect, but that's okay as well.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went off on a tangent, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's really important to be or authentic when it comes to it. And I suppose it's one of the main reasons why I've decided to get back into therapy now, also because if I'm talking about being open about just stuttering on my Instagram account, I need to look at myself as well and say, okay, in your daily life, are you really being that open about your stuttering, or are you passing as fluent? Like maybe some of the time. So I think, yeah, authenticity is very important for me to. So if I am going to be talking about being open about your stuttering and so on, I need to be able to live that life then as well. So yeah, so I suppose that to just let people know that like life can have its struggles then as well, and that's okay. But just as long as you're true to yourself and maybe you're true to the message that you're putting out there as well. So
yeah. Is it fair to say that maybe both of you had a little bit of an experience where you're putting out this content about authenticity, stuttering, pride, right? And then that content like impacted your self-reflection on like, am I being as authentic as I want to be? Am I living stuttering pride?
Yeah, definitely. I would have felt that even recently, because I had a situation where I was going down to the local garage to just get a wrap for my lunch, and I was walking out of the car, and I knew, so I had this anticipation that I was going to stutter on the word tomatoes. So I was walking into the garage. Okay, you are going to stutter on this wood now. So what are you going to do? You know. So I kind of went up to the counter and I was pretty fluent. So I was asking, yeah, could I get a wrap with a chicken fillet on it and some onions and some lettuce, and then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have some two and I threw tomatoes in it to just get the word out, like, you know. And the girl behind the counter was like, "Oh, are you looking for some tuna?" I was saying no. So yeah. So I wasn't like really being authentic in that situation because I was asking my stuttering, like, so um yeah, so it just felt like, so just what you're talking about, Nick, what we post, um I think it does make us reflect on our daily life then as well, anyway. So
Definitely. I think, yeah, I suppose I just following up on from that. I've had a few speaking situations where I like the phone experience I shared a few weeks ago. And I was like, this would make great like content and I can post this and whatever. But then it's like I don't want to be living or I don't want to be living for content, if that makes any sense. Like living in order to make stuff. I want to live, and if content comes out of that, then that works out. But I think I suppose for me that's kind of that changed my perception of it, in that like I have a stutter and I have several moments in my life where my stutter comes up, and I feel like I think it's great to share them, but then it's also like I think for me it's important to reflect on them as well. So like in the beginning I've kind of shared a lot of different things, but like more recently I'm like, no, well, like how do I feel about that, rather than like how will other people view it? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're living for you, not living to create content for others. But yeah, and it seems like coming from a place of like for you seems like the content would be even more powerful because it's that much more real. But it seems like, right, there's a risk in like the more vulnerable we are, feels like there's even more of a risk in being authentic. And earlier when you all were chatting, um in talking about comments, like a little fear or hesitation about other people commenting on your content, on the material that you're putting out. And it made me think about like our fear that we have, maybe just out in the world in general, that someone's gonna like comment for real, like on your request for tuna, right? Or on, well, not even on that, right? On your stutter. They're gonna comment either by saying something, or they're just gonna look at you in a way where that they're thinking about it, they're commenting. And so I'm wondering, is there anything that you've learned from your experiences in being so authentic and open publicly, that's helped you take more risks to be personally more authentic or true to yourself with stuttering?
I think dealing with the just how you feel on the inside, Nick, dealing with, because stigma runs so deep then that like we still have the memories from when we were younger, trying to navigate ourselves in a fluent world. So, and So I think for me, it's the one of the drivers is to um, challenge maybe stigma when I see it out in public then as well, and also to challenge how I feel on the inside when it comes to my own
Yeah.
stuttering. So,
Mhm.
so how I would do that then, because I suppose recently, I'm thinking the last few months, I was yeah, I was in a bar here in the city that I'm living, and I was ordering a drink, and so I had got a block on the drink that I was ordering, but I managed. So I was just about to get the word out, but the staff behind the bar was like, "Oh, so you want this drink?" Like, and so I just said, look at now, and I said it in a nice, calm way. Then I said, look, I am a person who stammers, so it probably would be best if you gave me time to just say what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Now she was totally grand with it, but even just having that self ad 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 advocacy skills to just be able to say that then, and then not to feel that shame that is attached to it then as well.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think the whole idea of like having shame and feeling ashamed. I think that's like you doing that was a very powerful thing. I think, because like it's kind of showing that you're not ashamed and you are able to disclose that you're a person who stutters, but you're not getting like upset or angry. It's all about like educating people. And I suppose that's actually one thing I do struggle with sometimes, is that I don't mind telling someone I stutter, and I don't mind stuttering in front of people. The one thing I don't do, I suppose, is when like Stephen's similar to you, when I'm in like a bar or a restaurant or something and they finish my sentence, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna like try educate them or try explain myself. And I think that's something that I would like to work on in the future. But I suppose for me, one of the ways that I self advocate, it doesn't sound like a big thing, but to me it definitely is a big thing, is when and this happened actually yesterday, I had to introduce myself to someone, and I introduced myself, but I kept like really not like intense eye contact, like I wasn't like staring at them. But I was just, in a relaxed way, I was like looking them in the eye, and I was like, I was saying my name, but I was like stuttering on my name. And I think for me, once I did that, it kind of showed them that like I'm okay. Like, this is my name. I stutter on it sometimes, but it's not a big thing.
Hmm. Really interesting. Yeah, I love that idea of using eye contact. I certainly talk about eye contact a lot in therapy and work that I do, but right, the eye contact is like when we're looking at someone and we're looking at their eyes, we're connecting with them. Yeah, and we're saying like, I'm still here. I'm still talking to you. There's more I want to say. I am going to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And but Bevan, that piece about wanting to educate them more, what do you mean? Like wanting them to know more about stuttering, know more about you? What do you mean?
I suppose like know more about stuttering, and that it doesn't need to be the elephant in the room, and that like the thing that we all know is there, but we don't talk, or we don't necessarily even have to talk about it. It can just be something that's like there, and it's like, yes, I acknowledge it, and that's okay. It's not it doesn't have to be, yeah, it doesn't have to be a yeah, it doesn't have to be the elephant in the room, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was a big thing for me, I think, when I was maybe in my late 20s, the early 30s. It's just stuttering being the elephant in the room that I wasn't willing to talk about. So I don't think anyone else would have been willing to talk about it then. So,
Mm.
because of maybe it's a couple of things. Maybe it's the kind of non-verbal communication that I was giving off also, but it's also just the effect of so authority then as well, I think.
Mm. Stephen, I love the idea you brought up, that you were saying like, I wouldn't be able to talk about it, or I wasn't ready to talk about the elephant in the room, so others weren't ready either. Right? It's almost like it has to start with you, right? Like you make this social media post, and then it invites conversation about it, right? And so it sounds like when we put out that we have time, or we want to talk about stuttering, then it's more okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Nick, because by saying that, I think maybe I'm saying all the onus is up to me then. So whereas maybe if the authority was more understanding in the first place,
Yeah.
I think it would be easier for us then, I think. So so maybe it could be a combination of both then anyway. So it's okay, are we ready? Because like I know there was probably times when I wasn't like ready to talk about my stuttering. So I don't think I would have appreciated maybe if somebody was like, oh, I just noticed that you stutter there.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Him?
Yeah, is it that guy just behind me?
Yeah.
Mm.
Such an important point, right? Like we want people in society to be more informed, and the onus isn't always on us, but it sounds like a part of it is on us, or not on. Well, a part of it is that are we ready to talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And right, I wonder if the world we live in was more welcoming to people who speak differently. Would that help us be ready to talk about it sooner, earlier, with more people?
I
Like
think
sorry, Ben, go ahead.
okay. I think that's what's so great about the stuttering community at the moment, is because we're all so like open about it. Well, as far like the people that I've spoken to and the people that I interact with, is that we are all so open about it, and we're all wanting to talk about it and wanting to educate and advocate. And I think if that continues, if that community like grows, eventually, hopefully, society will change its perception. And yeah, that's just, yeah, I'm hoping in that way, that like eventually we're going to become so loud that like the rest of the world doesn't have any other choice but to kind of change their perception. hopefully.
Yeah, judging from like just that whole buzz at Stammerfest there recently, just that opening is that people people really wanting to be accepting of stuttering. Um, the whole thing kind of made me think about, okay, but what about the other members in the stuttering
Mm.
community that maybe want to focus on their fluency, want to focus on so on. So it kind of made me think about, okay, so where do these people go when actually all of us are in the conference saying, okay, yeah, look, we're all about let's being open about us stuttering and so on.
Yeah.
So, because I think I did a post there recently about how do we cater for everyone that's in the community, because if you think about it, it is quite a diverse community, really. Like if people have different goals that they want, maybe there are a lot of people that do want to focus on the fluency side of things, and maybe aren't at that stage of the acceptance of structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just got me thinking about that.
Yeah. It makes me wonder and want to ask you all the question, like, for those who stutter, who are want to work on trying to minimize stuttering, to conceal stuttering in a way where others don't know that they stutter. Um, is there a way for someone at that place? Is there a way for them to also, like, can you do both? Do you have to like be someone who's letting stuttering out a lot to be someone to like to educate people about stuttering? What do you all think? Is it okay to conceal but also educate, or talk more about it?
Well, I know with the likes of our report groups, so we have people from maybe that have done all various different
Mm.
pro pro programs. Um, so we do try and ensure then that our report groups are open for all. So like,
Mm-hmm.
so we might have somebody that's focused on fluency,
Mm-hmm.
and but I think the conversations can still happen. So
Mm-hmm.
you can still have the education on stuttering, even if you have different goals when it comes to the out outcomes anyway. So.
Mm. I agree with that, I think. I think one of the key, well, I suppose one of the key things that I always talk about is like, or that not talk about, I think about, and that like we're all on our own stuttering journeys, and I think it's important to respect that and to understand it. Um, and I think having that open communication with all different types of people who stutter. I mean, types as in like, if you're covert or if you're overt or you're a mixture of the two, or if you don't necessarily accept yourself, but you can accept others. I think it's important to include that, or to include everyone in the conversation, as long as there's this kind of overall um umbrella of like we all accept each other and we all accept each other's tutoring in whatever shape or form that takes.
Yeah.
I just had to mute. I just had to mute my mic because my dogs are barking here in the background. So if I'm muted for a second.
All good, Stephen. Yeah, I'm wondering. So yeah, that Bevan, like, okay, regardless of what kind of therapy you're in, if you're in therapy, if you're not therapy, where you are on your journey, right? But I'm wondering from you all, I'm wondering if you have any advice for someone who maybe they're in therapy, maybe they're not, but they haven't talked about it. They're not in a place where they're ready to bring it up with anyone, really, maybe except their closest, safest circles. And right, I think talking with all of you, like, we all are in a place, it seems like, where we are okay with being seen as someone who stutters. And I think we see some power in being seen, and sometimes standing in front of others in order to be seen, right? To educate, right? I'm here, this is how I talk. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with how I talk. But right, those ideas might be, for someone who's not in that world, might be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Slow down. So for someone who's listening or watching who hears that and has that slow down reaction, do we have any thoughts for them, or do we have yeah, any ideas?
I think, Nick, it has to be done on a hierarchy. So obviously, if you talk to the ones that you really feel comfortable and safe with first, and if you then feel like you want to go outside of that circle, and maybe think about who you can talk to then, and if you want to reach out to one of the source or report or organizations then, but it is done in kind of steps. So don't think that you have to take this big leap of faith, that you have to go higher up the hierarchy of your fear needs. Just take it in small steps. But I know for me on my own journey, that it probably took me a couple of weeks to build up the courage to attend the first support group meeting that I went to with the Irish Stammering Association. But it was so worth doing, because I've just never looked back since.
Yeah. So Stephen, it sounds like meeting other people who
Yeah.
stammer or stutter was a really big first step for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I think, the whole meeting with your own kind. I don't know if that sounds right, but like, meeting with your own people, so to speak, and kind of sharing experiences and sharing, stories and advice and tips if you want as well. I think that's a really important thing to know, that like you're not on your own. But then it's also like, don't, like, I think it's just important to not beat yourself up about it either. Like, if you're not ready to talk about it, to be open with it, if you're still, covert in some situations and not covert in other situations, I think that's totally fine as well. I think, like, you know, it goes back to the whole kind of complex nature of stuttering, and I think, you know, you have to do whatever you think is right for yourself, and like, you know, it doesn't make a difference if myself and Stephen are off, you know, preaching to the wind, and like, you know, I'm talking a lot about acceptance and, you know, like all that, like it doesn't make it like your life is your life, and your stuttering journey is your own, and you're the only one that gets to decide when you're ready to talk and ready to be open. And I think it's great that we have such a wide kind of um network of like all types of people talking about stuttering. And I think even for the people that don't want to talk about it, the fact that, well, hopefully the fact that they're, you know, reaching out and on Instagram, and they're like scrolling through all of these kind of posts and like pages and stuff, that in itself is them maybe taking the first step in like accepting themselves.
Yeah. I that idea is so interesting. That, and I think you're spot on. The idea of, yeah, that maybe just, okay, listening to this, and then looking at your social media pages where you talk about stuttering and engage with stuttering, that just doing that is a step towards maybe thinking about stuttering in a different way. And then I wonder, but Bevan, if we could take that one step further of being like, you know, if you engage with some of your content, either of your content online, then applying that content to yourself, right? Like, here's what Bevan thinks about stuttering being complicated and the phone call. And like, I think about one of your recent posts where you say like, I don't know, you build some anticipation being like, I just had this phone call, or I just had this conversation and I stuttered so well, right? Like, so you're introducing this idea of having like a lot of pride in that moment. But do they feel that way? Have they ever felt that way? I wonder, like, right, it's okay if they engage and they have a different reaction. If someone engages and has a different reaction than what you're talking about, you know. So
Definitely. I
maybe,
think, sorry.
yeah, maybe it opens up the possibilities, you know. So it's maybe it kind of plants a thought in the head. So maybe they have never heard anyone talk about stuttering, like stuttering so well, or I like, maybe I saw some kid there recently saying the fact that he rocked his stuttering, like, you know. So like, you know, it's
yeah,
people talking about stuttering in a way that they haven't heard previously. So.
And I think, but I think Stephen and Nick, you're like, I think you're so right. I think like, you know, even if they're like, I don't stutter well, I stutter like this, or like insert word here. And they're like, why does she think she's stutters so well? But they're not getting upset. They're like questioning it, and they're like, okay, what is her perspective, and how maybe can I change my mind, or where does she get her perspective? Like, so I think it's, yeah, I agree with you both on that.
Cool.
yeah. Sounds like maybe getting out of our own experience of stuttering to learn about someone else's experience, even if what we think they're saying is totally not what we believe, related to being open and authentic, or it's just too scary. Yeah. What have you all gained from from standing up for stuttering, being so publicly seen?
I think what I've gained is just being able to look at what stuttering has given me from living the experience as a person who stutters. So thinking, okay, I'm my levels of empathy. I don't think I would necessarily be as empathic if I didn't have a stutter. Um, my ability to stay calm in a crisis situation, because when I was younger, I had so many crisis situations in relation to my stuttering that now I think I have this like calmness and stillness when I see crisis situations happening in different things, like maybe work or so on, that I can have this kind of calmness and say, okay, we can get through this anyway. So yeah, I've been able to see the qualities that I think I've gotten from living the experience of somebody who's stutters. Chris Constantino did a great paper from the International Stammering Awareness Day, I think 2016, I think, might have been.
I suppose what I have gotten from is it from creating content or having a platform?
You know,
Or sorry, go on. No, you go.
yeah, I think either question would be awesome to hear from you on. Like, right, the idea about, I think we could, going off of Chris Constantino's question, like, what is your stuttering gain, right? What have you gained from being a person who stutters? I think if that feels like a bit better question to answer, do it. But I think my original question was like, what have you gained from
the content? Is
yeah, your content, and like
yeah.
being seen and being public and advocating for people who stutter. What have you personally gained from doing that work?
And I suppose I'm just gonna copy Stephen and say one of the things that my stuttering has given me is the ability of empathy, and to give others empathy and compassion and kindness. And I think that's overall just one of the, if not the biggest thing I've gained from being a person who stutters. But I suppose just going back to the original question, I think having a community, I think, is one of the things that I'm really grateful for through creating my account, is that, like, there's so many people who stutter around the world, and I think having those connections with people from all over the world, I think, is so important and so inspiring. And I think yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things I've gained from it as well. Just, yeah, I'm gonna go back to being with your own kind, or communicating with your own kind.
Also, Nick, I think, yes, sorry, maybe to answer your first question properly, I think
I always ask, I never just ask one question.
I think by trying to live the content also, I think it helps us to be more or authentic then, because like this is stuff that we are saying that, okay, this has really worked for us, so you can have to live that life then as well. And that helps, and even just showing the vulnerability just really opens up so many doors for you. I did a speech, I did a presentation for speech and language therapist from the UK there the other day, and just by me sharing my story and just showing that vulnerability, just really helped to just for people to get it and for people to connect with you then as well.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. So kind of beginning to come to a conclusion here, or kind of wrap up our discussion. I'm wondering, right? So both of you created platforms to change how the world sees stuttering, or to be involved in the dialogue with how the world talks about stuttering. Is that an okay
Yeah.
kind of take away from your work? And so I'm wondering, what are your hopes or action for change for the future that you're excited about? What are you hoping to change about stuttering in our world today?
I'm hoping to challenge just the narratives that are out there. Stuttering is something that has to be overcome. Like stuttering can just be like, stuttering doesn't always need to have words next to it. So like stuttering can exist on its own. So like we don't need to see overcoming stuttering, or even maybe okay. Maybe I'm saying that we don't even need to see open stuttering in the future, that it can just be stuttering. So yeah, to challenge the narrative that it's something that needs to be overcome. I'll pass on to Bevan in case I'll probably come back with another.
No, I agree with you, Stephen. I think definitely changing the narrative that surrounds stuttering and changing the perception of it, and changing even like the representation of it. Just I think I think just seeing like the royal I suppose I suppose as I suppose I would hope one of my hopes for the future and for the present, but for the future, is that people who stutter can just be seen as people. They don't need to be seen as people who stutter. I think it's important just like for yourself to recognize that you do stutter and you do have one, but it's the whole idea of like, you don't need to, it doesn't need to define who you are, which I suppose then that leads on to like changing the kind of like the narrative as well.
Yeah.
And a big one for me, Nick, is so that the difference doesn't have to be stigmatized then, so by us just talking differently to most of the population, that doesn't have to be in eternalized as something that's wrong. It can just be that. So
yeah, me too. Your hopes are my hopes too.
Well, look, and I think we can be positive, because if you look at how change has happened in the last 20 to 30 years, like even around difference, we have come so far in relation to difference over the last 20 to 30 years, that what is it going to be like in another 20 or 30 years?
Mm.
If you look at the kids that are growing up now, I just don't think we place enough faith in kids. Like, you know, kids now are, I think they are a lot more accepting of difference now than maybe my generation is.
Mm. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Cool.
So I wanted to thank you both so much for being here to chat. Really good and interesting stuff. And thank you for the work you do publicly, working on destigmatizing stuttering and changing the narrative, challenging the narrative that people who stutter are bad, are doing something wrong, right? Are broken, right? Challenging that narrative, saying that that's not the case at all.
Cool.
So
Nick,
yeah.
can we just give a big shout out to the Irish Stammering Association, just with the International Stammering Awareness Week? So we have a week of events happening from the 16th of October, finishing on the 22nd. So if anyone wants to check it out, you can go to the website, which is stammeringireland.ie. So
we've got a really cool micro site on there that's just devoted to ISAD 2022 as well. So check it out if you want. It's really cool. It's got like a logo thing happening. It's even just going like look at that.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, a great opportunity to connect with other people who stutter or stammer.
Yeah. And also just a big thank you to you, Nick, for kind of having us on, and to everyone else in Open Stutter.
Awesome.
Definitely. I will second that as well.
Thank you both so much.